So we catch up with Teasel and the pack, and Orville's outrunning everybody on the hunt, and it's hard to keep up with him. That crazy old man. And Teasel thinks back to his Catholic roots and the death of his mom, because she had wound poisoning and died. A baby fetus in a plastic bag in her coffin. And we see that it really kind of haunts Teasel. We see his upbringing, his dad preparing him for everything. His dad's early passing at 13 or 14, I believe. And his deep connection to his sort of adopted father, Orville. Like, we see him coming back home from Korea, accepting the job as the sheriff. Returning and all that stuff. Restoring an old house to live in, like his own place and everything, and getting married, etc. And then we cut back to Rambo, and in my mind, I can just hear that magnificent Jerry Goldsmith theme, you know. Rambo climbs a cliff and sort of corners himself. He can see that the posse is about a mile off and approaching fast. He pushes over a boulder to make it hard for them to continue on his path, giving him time, but he's still cornered for that moment. So he scurries through some rocks, scraping his knuckles bare. He starts sliding his way down a shale cliff face. We also go into his mind working scenarios for survival skills, etc. Cutting various parts of his skin in the process. He judges the distance and continues the 200-foot climb down, climbing at a rate of 1 minute per body length, all the way down. Well, an attempt all the way down. So he's descending and trying not to fall off, imagining it's just a class at jump school, you know, getting constantly more careless than snapping back into focus. So now the chopper's on him pretty much, and he readies for the nightmare to come, you know. They start firing at him in an attempt to cause him to fall off the cliff. They almost shoot him in the head, and he's forced into a like straw dog type action. A few bullets later, like pieces of jagged rock and bullet shrapnel tear off a small piece of Rambo's face, embedding itself like within his cheek, and you know, sweat and blood stinging Rambo's eyes, and he makes out like a fir tree below about 20 feet, and he jumps. It's a long fall, well, 20-foot fall, I should say. But the fall keeps going, you know. He's ripping through branches in long motion until he forcefully stops on a branch, breaking his ribs. So hard he is mute, and there's no air in his body. He's like half paralyzed. He's trying to get away, so he's like wrenching the gun free from an above branch. The chopper comes down steady, and it's final time, you know. Rambo goes Rambo, and Rambo aims his sights on the gunman in the cockpit, whose sights are in fact straight on Rambo, and he fires, and the man, well, like glass explodes off the window shield of the helicopter. The man, the shooter, grabs his face as it caves inward, then out the back of his head. And, so blood, brain, and bits of skull with hair cover the inside of the cockpit. And bathe the pilot as well, like he's full of it. It's like lands all over him. He tries to hide down the cockpit, but the rear of the helicopter comes in contact with the cliff because it tilts, and the whole thing comes down, scraping off the cliff as it falls. Like, the whole thing explodes, sending out propeller blades and shrapnel into the air. The tree that Rambo's in bursts into flames, and the stench of gasoline and burning flesh comes over him. and he's, brought back once again to the war. So by this time, Teasel and his men have cleared away the boulder. Orville sets up this little contraption, and they are able to move the boulder, and they're back in pursuit. And in pain, Rambo climbs down the tree, occasionally ripping his clothes, choking on the black smoke beneath him that's coming up. And he jumps down out of the tree smiling, and the pain kicks back in, and he runs back into the forest, looking back to see the dogs on the cliff high behind him, and he's shell shocked, and he throws up again, thinking of Mexico for a second, then doubles back to the hill, camouflaged in the rubble. He takes aim at Orville, the 6 dogs, as well as Teasel and the 10 men above. So he's like camouflaged in the rubble, like everything's burning all around them, and he can smell the dead bodies, and he's watching Teasel scurry back and forth like a rooster, and he aims at him, joking to himself, like, "Oh, that's what you are, Teasel. You're just a cock." And he aims up in his sights, Teasel's throat, meaning to cut his orders off in mid-sentence to his men, but opts to take out the dogs first to slow down the chase. He thinks about his encounters with German shepherds in the war, then takes out 2 dogs that Orville is holding and 2 dogs a deputy Jeremy is holding. The deputy loses balance, falling off with the dog still in his hand, with the leashes, and the dogs go over and are sent smashing to the jagged rocks below. So they all go over, and the men start firing down like crazy, blasting off every shell they can, refusing to listen to Teasel, telling them to cease fire. Orville's keeping low, holding the last remaining dog along the side. And the action stops, and the posse focuses on Mitch, who has literally shat himself. He totally defecates himself. So he's all freaked out, and they're all trying to get away from him because he smells and stuff. And they look down to the strewn out spaghetti of bodies below, and there's a stern moment between Orville and Teasel, and the remaining dog is completely freaked out. So they're fighting amongst themselves. Shingleton tries to fire down at what he thinks is Rambo, and Teasel's humiliating the group of men, docking them days pay, etc. One man even had got buck fever and shot out his cartridge, thinking he was shooting, but really he was just emptying his bullets. Thus bringing the death count to 11 for Rambo. Yeah, I'm taking into account Rambo's kills, this many dogs, this many humans. Later on, he kills an owl. Just Rambo's kill. So, Rambo's kill count has now reached 11. And we're about to see that, just skyrocket.